What the Rose Did to the Cypress. Once upon a time, a great king of the East, named Salman Lalposh, had three brave and clever sons, Tamasap, Pamas, and Almas. One day, when the king was sitting in his hall of audience, his eldest son, Prince Tasmaps, came before him, and after greeting his father with due respect, he said, "O royal father, I am tired of the town. If you will give me leave, I will take my servants tomorrow and go out into the country to hunt on the hill skirts. And when I have taken some game, I will come back at evening prayer time." His father consented, and sent him with some of his own trusted servants, and also hawks, falcons, and hunting dogs, cheetahs, and leopards. At the place where the prince intended to hunt, he saw a most beautiful deer, and ordered that it should not be killed, but trapped or captured with a noose. The deer looked about for a place where he might escape from the ring of the beaters, and spied one unwatched close to the prince himself. It bounded high and leapt over his head, got out of the ring, and tore like the eastern wind into the waste. The prince put spurs to his horse and pursued it, and was soon lost to sight of his followers. Until the world-lighting sun stood above his head at the zenith, he did not take his eyes off the deer. Suddenly it disappeared behind some rising ground, and with all his search, he could not find any further trace of it. He was now drenched in sweat, and he breathed with pain, and his horse's tongue hung from its mouth with thirst. He dismounted and toiled, with bridle on arm, praying and casting himself on the mercy of heaven. Then his horse fell and surrendered its life to God. On and on he went across the sandy waste, weeping with a burning breast, till at length a hill rose into sight. He mustered his strength and climbed to the top, and there he found a giant tree whose foot kept firm the wrinkled earth, and whose crest touched the very heaven. Its branches had put forth a glory of leaves, and there was grass and a spring beneath it, and flowers of many colors. Gladdened by this sight, he dragged himself to the water's edge, and drank his fill, and returned thanks for his deliverance from thirst. He looked about him, and to his amazement he saw close by a royal seat. While he was pondering what could have been brought into this merciless desert, a man drew near who was dressed a little like a fakir, and had bare head and feet, but walked with the free carriage of a person of rank. His face was kind and wise and thoughtful, and he came on and spoke to the prince. "Oh, good youth, how did you come here? Who are you? Where did you come from?" The prince told everything, just as it had happened to him, and then respectfully added, "I've made known my own circumstances to you, and now I venture to beg you to tell me your own. Who are you? How did you come to make your dwelling in this wilderness?" To this the fakir replied, "Oh, youth, it would be best for you to have nothing to do with me, and to know nothing of my fortunes, for my story is fit neither for telling nor for hearing." The prince, however, pleaded so hard to be told, that at last there was nothing to be done but to let him hear. "Learn and know, O young man, that I am King Janangir of Babylon, and that once I had an army and servants, a family and treasure, untold wealth and belongings. The Most High God gave me 7 sons who grew up well versed in all princely arts. My older son heard from travelers that in Turkestan, on the Chinese frontier, there is a king named Quimus, the son of Timus, and that he has an only child, a daughter named Mara Afruz, who under the azure heaven is unrivaled with beauty. Princes come from all quarters to ask for her hand, and on one and all she imposes a condition. She says to them, I know a riddle, and I will marry anyone who answers it, and will bestow on him all my possessions. But if a suitor cannot answer my question, I cut off his head and hang it on the battlements of the citadel. The riddle she asked is, what did the rose do to the cypress? Now, when my son heard this tale, he fell in love with that unseen girl, and he came to me lamenting and bewailing himself. Nothing that I could say had the slightest effect on him. I said, Oh, my son, if there must be fruit of this fancy of yours, I will lead forth a great army against King Cremus. If he will give you his daughter freely, well and good, and if not, I will ravage his kingdom and bring her away by force. This plan did not please him, and he said, It is not right to lay a kingdom to waste and to destroy a palace so that I may attain my desire. I will go alone. I will answer the riddle and win her in this way. At last, out of pity for him, I let him go. He reached the city of King Quimus. He was asked the riddle and could not give the true answer, and his head was cut off and hung upon the battlements. Then I mourned him in black raiment for 40 days. After this, another and another of my sons were seized by the same desire, and in the end, all my 7 sons went and all were killed. In grief for this death, I have abandoned my throne, and I abide here in this desert, withholding my hand from all state business, and wearing myself away in sorrow. Prince Moussep listened to this tale, and then the arrow of love for that unforeseen girl struck his heart also. Just this moment of his ill fate, his people came up and gathered round him like moths round a light. They brought him a horse, and fleet as the breeze of the dawn, he set his willing foot into the stirrup of safety and rode off. As the days went by, the thorn of love rankled in his heart, and he became the very example of lovers, and grew faint and feeble. At last his confidence searched his heart and lifted the veil from the face of love, and then set the matter before the king, King Solomon La Poche. Your son, Prince Talmosap, loves distractedly the Princess Milvar, Friz, daughter of King Quimus, son of Timus. Then they all told the king about her and her doings. A mist of sadness clouded the king's mind, and he said to his son, If this thing is so, I will in the first place send a courier with friendly letters to King Quimus, and will ask the hand of his daughter. I will send abundance of gifts and a string of camels laden with flashing stones and rubies of Bahakistan. In this way I will bring her and her suite, and I will give her to you to be your solace. But if King Quimus is unwilling to give her to you, I will pour a whirlwind of soldiers upon him, and I will bring to you in this way that most consequential of girls. But the prince said that this plan would not be right, and that he would go himself, and would answer the riddle. Then the king's wise men said, This is a very weighty matter. It would be best to allow the prince to set out accompanied by some persons in whom you have confidence. Maybe he will repent and come back. So King Salmon ordered all preparations for the journey to be made. Then Prince Mamaps took his leave and set out, accompanied by some courtiers, and taking with him a string of 2-humped raven-eyed camels, laden with jewels and gold and costly stuffs. By stage after stage, and after many days' journeying, he arrived at the city of King Quimus. What did he see? A towering citadel whose foot kept firm in the wrinkled earth, and whose battlements touched the blue heaven. He saw hanging from its battlements many heads, but it had not least effect of him on those heads of men who of rank. He listened to no advice about laying aside his fancy, but rode up to the gate and on into the heart of the city. The place was so splendid that the eyes of all ages had never seen its like, and there, in an open square, he found a tent of crimson satin set up, and beneath it 2 jeweled drums with jeweled sticks. These drums were put there so that the suitors of the princess might announce their arrival by beating on them, after which someone would come and take them to the king's presence. The sight of the drums stirred the fire of the Prince Tom's love, and he dismounted and moved towards him, but his companions hurried after him and begged him first to let them go and announce him to the king, and said that then, when they had put their possessions in place of security, they would enter into all important matter of the princess. The prince, however, replied that there was for one thing only, that his first duty was to beat the drums and announce himself as a suitor, when he would be taken, as such, to the king, who would then give him the proper lodgment. So he struck upon the drums, and at once summoned an officer who took him to King Quimus. When the king saw how very young the prince looked, and that he was still drinking from the fountain of wonder, he said, "O youth, leave aside this fancy which my daughter has conceived in the pride of her beauty. No one can answer her riddle, for she has done to death many men who had had no pleasure in life nor tasted its charms. God forbid that your spring should be ravaged in the autumn winds of martyrdom." All his urgency, however, had no effect in making the prince withdraw. At length it was settled between them that 3 days should be given to pleasant hospitality, and that then should follow what had to be said and done. Then the prince went to his own quarters and was treated as became his station. King Quimus now sent for his daughter and for her mother, Golra, and talked to them. He said to the Mashabrets, "Listen to me, you cruel flirt. Why do you insist in this folly? Now there has come to ask your hand a prince of the East, so handsome that the very sun grows modest before the splendor of his face. He is rich, and he has brought golds and jewels, all for you, only if you will marry him. A better husband you cannot find." But all the arguments of father and mother were wasted, for her only answer was, "Oh, my father, I have sworn to myself that I will not marry, even if 1,000 years goes by, unless someone answers my riddle, and that I will give myself to that man only who does answer it." 3 days passed, and then the riddle was asked. "What did the rose do to the cypress?" The prince had an eloquent tongue which could split a hair, and without hesitation he replied to her with a verse. "Only the omnipotent has knowledge of secrets. If any man says, 'I know,' do not believe him." Then a servant fetched in the polluted, blue-eyed headsman, who asked, "O son of life has come near to setting," and took the prince by the arm, placed him upon the cloth of execution, and then, all merciless and stony-hearted, cut the head from his body and hung it on the battlements. The news of the death of Prince Tom plunged his father into despair and stupefaction. He mourned for him in black raiment for 40 days, and then, a few days later, the second son, Prince Almas, extracted from him leave to go too, and he also was put to death. One son only now remained, Brave, eloquent, happy-natured Almas rock Bakash. One day, when his father sat brooding over his lost children, Almas came before him and said, "Oh, father mine, the daughter of King Quimus has done my two brothers to death. I wish to avenge them upon her." These words brought his father to tears. "Oh, to avenge them upon her! Oh, the light of your father," he cried. "I have no one left but you, and now you ask to let me go to your death." "Dear father," pleaded the prince, "until I have lowered the pride of that beauty and have set her here before you, I cannot settle down, or indeed sit down off my feet." In the end, he too got leave to go, but he went without a following and alone. Like his brothers, he made the long journey to the city of Quimus, the son of Timus. Like them, he saw the citadel, but he saw there the heads of Tosmut and Camus. He went about into the city and saw the tents and the drums, and then went out again to the village not far off. Here he found a very old man who had a wife 120 years old, or maybe even more. Their lives were coming to their end, but they had never beheld a face of a child of their own. They were glad when the prince came to their house, and they dealt him as if a son. He put all his belongings into their charge and fastened his horse to their outhouse. Then he asked them not to speak of him any more, and to keep his affairs secret. He exchanged his royal dress for another, and the next morning, just as the sun looked forth from its eastern oratory, he went again into the city. He turned over in his mind without ceasing how he was to find out the meaning of the riddle, and to give them a right answer, and who could help him, and how to avenge his brothers. He wandered about the city, but heard nothing of service, for there was no one in all the land who understood the riddle of Princess Mirafruz. One day he thought he would go to her own palace and see if he could learn anything there. So he went out to the garden house. It was a very splendid place with a wonderful gateway, and the wall was like Alexander's ramparts. Many gatekeepers were on guard, and there was no chance of passing them. His heart was full of bitterness, but he said to himself, "All will be well, and here I shall get what I want." He went round outside the garden wall, hoping to find a gap, and he made supplication in the court of supplications, and prayed, "O holder of the hand of the hopeless, show me my way." While he prayed, he bethought himself that he could get into the garden with a stream of inflowing water. He looked carefully around, fearing to be seen, stripped and slid into the stream, and was carried within the great walls. There he hid himself till his loincloth was dry. The garden was very Eden, with running water amongst its lawns, with flowers and the lament of doves and a jug of nightingales. It was a place to steal the senses from the brain. He wandered about and saw the house, and there seemed to be no one there. In the forefront was a royal seat of polished jasper, and in the middle of the platform was a basin of purest water that flashed like a mirror. He pleased himself with these sights for a while, and then went back to the garden and hid himself from the gardeners, and passed the night. The next morning he put on the appearance of a madman and wandered about till he came to the lawn where several pert-faced girls were amusing themselves. On a throne, jeweled and overspread with silken stuff, sat a girl with a splendor whose beauty lighted up the place, and whose ambergris and attar perfumed the whole air. That must be Mirafruz, he thought. She is lovely indeed. Just then one of the attendants came to the water's edge to fill a cup, and though the prince was hiding, his face was reflected in the water. When she saw his image, she was frightened and let her cup fall into the stream, and thought, Is it an angel, or a fairy, or a man? Fear and trembling took hold of her, and she screamed, as women scream. Then some of the other girls came and took her to the princess, who asked, "What does the matter, my pretty one?" "Oh, princess, I went for water and I saw an image, and I was afraid." So another girl went to the water and saw the same thing, and came back with the same story. The princess wished to see for herself. She rose and paced to the spot where the march of the prancing peacock. When she saw the image, she said to her nurse, "Find out who's reflected in the water and where he lives." Her words reached the prince's ear. He lifted up his head, and she saw him and beheld beauty such as she had never seen before. She lost 100 hearts to him and signed to her nurse to bring him to her presence. The prince let himself be persuaded to go with the nurse, but when the princess questioned him as to who he was and how he had got into her garden, he behaved like a man out of his mind, sometimes smiling, sometimes crying, and saying, "I'm hungry," or words misplaced and random, civil mixed with rude. "What a pity," said the princess. "He is mad." And she liked him, and she said, "He is my madman. No one may hurt him." She took him to her house and told him not to go away, for that she would provide for all his wants. The prince thought, it would be excellent if here, in her very house, I could get the answer to a riddle, but I must be silent, on pain of death. Now the princess's household there was a girl called Dolaram. She it was who had first seen the image of the prince. She came to love him very much, and spent day and night thinking of how she could make her affection known to him. One day she escaped from the princess's notice and went to the prince, and laid her head on his feet and said, "Heaven has bestowed you beauty and charm. Please tell me your secret. Who are you, and how did you come here? I love you very much, and if you would like to leave this place, I will go with you. I have wealth equal to the treasure of a miserly quern." But the prince only made an answer like a man distraught, and told her nothing. He said to himself, "God forbid that veil should be taken in vain for my secrets. That would indeed disgrace me." So, with streaming eyes and burning breast, Dilharama rose and went to her house, and lamented and fretted. Now, whenever the princess commanded the prince's attendance, Dilaram, of all the girls, paid him attention and waited on him best. The princess noticed this and said, "Oh, Dilaram, you must take my madman into your charge and give him whatever he wants." This was the very thing that Dilaram had prayed for. A little later she took the prince into a private place, and she made him take an oath of secrecy, and she herself took one and swore, "By heaven, I will not tell your secrets. Tell me about yourself so that I may help you to get what you want." The prince now recognized her words and the perfume of true love, and he made compact with her. "Oh, lovely girl, I want to know what the rose did to the cypress. Your mistress cuts off men's heads because of this riddle. What is at the bottom of it, and why does she do it?" Then Dilram answered, "If you'll promise to marry me and keep me always amongst your favor, I will tell you all I know, and I will keep watch about the riddle." "Oh, lovely girl," rejoined he, "if I accomplish my purpose so that I no longer need strive for it, I will keep company with you. When I have this woman in my power and avenge my brothers, I will make you my solace." "Oh, wealth of my life and source of my joy," responded Dilram, "I do not know what the rose did to the cypress, but so much I know that the person who told me her affairs about is a negro whom she hides under her throne. You fled here from Rock of Caucasus. It is there you must make inquiry. There's no other way of getting at the truth. On hearing these words, the prince said to his heart, "O my heart, your task will yet wear away much of your life." He fell into long and far thought, until Aram looked at him and said, "O my life and my soul, do not be sad. If you would like this woman killed, I will put poison in her cup so that she will never know from her head from who dreamt her sleep again." "Oh, Doram, such vengeance is not manly. I shall not rest till I have gone to Whack of the Crocus and have cleared up the matter." Then they repeated the agreement of their marriage and bade one another goodbye. The prince now went back to the village and told the old man that was setting out on a long journey, and begged him not to be anxious, and to keep safe the goods which he had entrusted to him. The prince had not the least knowledge of the way to the Quack of the Crocus, and was cast down by the sense of helplessness. He was walking along by the horse's side when he appeared before him an old man of serene countenance, dressed in green and carrying a staff, a remembered Xir. The prince thanked heaven and laid the hands of reverence on his breast and salaamed. The old man returned the greeting graciously and asked, "How fare you? Whither are you bound? You look like a traveler." "Oh, revered saint, I am in this difficulty. I do not know the way to the Whack of Caucasus." The old man of good counsel looked at the young prince and said, "Turn back from this dangerous undertaking. Do not go. Choose some other task. If you had 100 lives, you would not bring out one safe from this journey." But his words had no effect on the prince's resolve. "What object have you," the old man asked, "in thus consuming your life?" "I have an important piece of business to do, and only this journey makes it possible. I must go. I pray you, in God's name, tell me the way." When the saint saw that the prince was not to be moved, he said, "Learn and know, O youth. The Whack of Quaff is in the Caucasus and its dependency of it. In it there are jinns, demons, and fairies. You must go on along this road till it forks into 3. Take neither the right nor the left, but the middle path. Follow this for a day and a night. Then you will come to a column on which is a marble slab inscribed with Kufic characters. Do what is written there. Beware of disobedience." Then he gave his good wishes for the journey and his blessing, and the prince kissed his feet and said goodbye, and, with thanks to the Causer of Causes, took to the road. After a day and a night he saw the column rise in silent beauty to the heavens. Everything was as the wise old man had said it would be, and the prince, who was skilled in all tongues, read the following Kufic inscription: "O travelers, be it known to you that this column has been set up with this tablet to give true directions about these roads. If a man would pass his life in ease and pleasantness, let him take the right-hand path. If he take the left, he will have some trouble, but he will reach his goal without much delay. Woe to him who chooses the middle path. If he had 1,000 lives, he would not save one. It is very hazardous. It leads to the Caucasus and an endless road. Beware of it." The prince read, and bared his head, and lifted his hands in supplication to him who has no needs, and prayed, "O friend of the traveler, I, thy servant, come to thee for succor. My purpose lies in the land of Quaff, and my road is full of peril. Lead me by it." And then he took a handful of earth and cast it onto his collar, and said, "O earth, be thou my grave and thou vest. To thee my winding sheet." Then he took the middle road and went along it, day after day, with many a silent prayer, till he saw trees rise from the weary waste of the sand. They grew in the garden, and he went up to gates and found it a slab of beautifully worked marble, and that near it lay sleeping, with his head on a stone, a negro whose face was so black that it made darkness around him. His upper lip, arched like an eyebrow, curved upwards to his nostrils, and his lower hung down like a camel's. 4 millstones formed his shield, and on a box tree close to him hung his giant sword. His loincloth was fashioned of 12 bear skins, and was bound round his waist by a chain of which each link was as big as an elephant's thigh. The prince approached and tied up his horse near the negro's head. Then he let fall the bismillah from his lips, entered the garden, and walked through it till he came to the private part, delighting in the great trees and lovely verdure and flowery borders. In the inner garden there were very many deer. These signed to him with eye and foot to go back, for that was enchanted grounds, but he did not understand them, and thought their pretty gestures were welcome. After a while he reached the palace, which was a porch more splendid than Caesar's, and was built of gold and silver bricks, while in its midst was a high seat overlaid with fine carpets, and into it opened 8 doors, each having opposite to it a marble basin. Banished in care, Prince Almas walked on through the garden, when suddenly a window opened, and a girl, who was lovely enough to make the moon writhe with jealousy, put out her head. She lost her heart to the good looks of the prince, and sent her nurse to fetch him so that she might learn where he came from and how he got into a private garden, where even lions and wolves did not venture. The nurse went and was struck with amazement at the sun-like radiance of his face. She salaamed and said, "Oh, youth, welcome! The lady of the gardens calls you. Come!" He went with her into the palace, which was like a house in paradise, and saw seated on royal carpets of the throne of a girl whose brilliance shamed the shining sun. He salaamed. She rose and took him by the hand and placed him near her. "Oh, young man, who are you? Where do you come from? And how did you get into this garden?" He told her his story, from beginning to end, and Lady Latifa replied, "Ah, this is folly. It will make you a vagabond of the earth and lead you to destruction. Come, cease such talk. No one can go to the Caucasus. Stay with me and be thankful, for here's a throne which you can share with me, and in a society you can enjoy my wealth. I will do whatever you wish. I will bring here the King Qualmas and his daughter. You can deal with them as you will." "Oh, Lady Latifa," he said, "I've made a compact with heaven, and not to sit down off my feet till I have been to Whack of Clough and have cleared up this matter, and have taken Mirafres from her father, as brave men take, and put her in prison. When I have done all this, I will come back to you in a state with great following, and I will marry you according to the law." Lady Latifa argued and urged her wishes, but in vain. The prince was not to be moved. Then she called to her cupbearers for new wine, for she thought that when his head was hot with it, he might consent to stay. The pure, clear wine was brought, and she filled a cup and gave it to him. He said, "Oh, most enchanting sweetheart, it is the rule of the host to drink first, and then the guest." So, to make him lose his head, she drained the cup, and then filled it again and gave it to him. He drank it off, and she took a lute from one of the singers and played upon it with skill which witched away the sense of all who heard. But it was all in vain. 3 days passed in such festivities, and on the 4th the prince said, "Oh, joy of my eyes, I beg now that you will bid me farewell, for my way is long, and the fire of your love darts flame into the harvest of my heart. By heaven's grace, I may accomplish my purpose, and if so, I will come back for you." Now she saw that she could not get her in any way change her resolve. She told her nurse to bring a certain casket which contained, she said, something exhilarating which would help the prince on his journey. The box was brought, and she divided off a portion of what was within and gave it to the prince to eat. Then, and while he was all unaware, she put forth her hand to a stick, fashioned like a snake. She said some words over it and struck him sharply on the shoulder, that he cried out. Then he made a pirouette, and found out that he was a deer. When he knew what had been done to him, he thought, "Oh, the threads of affection have gathered together. I have lost my last chance." He tried to escape, but the magician sent for her goldsmith, who, coming, overlaid the deer horns with gold and jewels. The kerchief, which that day she had had in her hand, was then tied around its neck, and this freed it from her attentions. The prince deer was now bounded into the garden, and at once sought some way of escape. It found none, and it joined the other deer, which soon made it their leader. Now, although the prince had been transformed into the form of a deer, he kept his man's heart and mind. He said to himself, "Thank heaven that Lady Latifah has changed me into some shape, for at least the deer are beautiful." He remained for some time, living as a deer amongst the rest, but at length resolved that to end such a life must be put ill some way. He looked again for some place by which he could get out of the magic garden. Falling around the wall, he reached the lower part. He remembered the divine names and flung himself over, saying, "Whatever happens is by the will of God." When he looked about, he found that he was in the very same place that he had jumped from. There was a palace, there was a garden, and there was a deer. 8 times he leapt over the wall, and 8 times he found himself where he had started. But after the 9th leap, there was a change. There was a palace and there was a garden, but the deer were gone. Presently, a girl of such moonlike beauty opened a window that the prince lost her to 100 hearts. She was delightful with the beauty of a deer, and cried to her nurse, "Oh, catch it if you can. I will give you this necklace, every pearl of which is worth a kingdom." The nurse coveted pearls, but she was, 300 years old, and she did not know how she could catch a deer. She went down to the garden and held out some grass, but when she went near the creature, it ran away. The girl watched with great excitement from the palace window and called, "Oh, nurse, if you don't catch it, I will kill you." "I'm killing myself," shouted back the old woman. The girl saw the nurse tottering along and went down to help, marching with the gait of a prancing peacock. When she saw the gilded horns and the kerchief, she said, "It must be accustomed to the hand. It must be some royal pet." The prince had it in his mind that this might be another magician who could give him some other shape, but still it seemed best to allow himself to be caught. So he played about the girl and let her catch him by the neck. A leash was brought, fruits were given, and it was caressed with delight. It was taken to the palace and tied to the foot of Lady Jamila's raised seat, but she ordered a longer cord to be brought so that it might be able to jump up beside her. When the nurse went to fix the cord, she saw tears falling from its eyes, and that it was dejected and sorrowful. "Oh, Lady Jamila, this is a wonderful deer. It is crying. I've never seen a deer cry before." Jamila darted down like a flash of lightning and saw that it was so. It rubbed its head on her feet and then shook it so sadly the girl cried for sympathy. She patted it and said, "Why are you sad, my dear heart? Why do you cry, my soul? Is it because I've caught you? I love you better than my own life." But, in spite of her comforting, it cried the more. Then Jamila said, "Unless I'm mistaken,
This is the work of my wicked sister Latifa, by whom the magic arts turned servants of God into beasts of the field.
At these words, the deer uttered sounds and laid its head on her feet. Then Jamila was sure that it was a man and said,
Be comforted. I will restore you to your own shape.
She bathed herself, then ordered the deer to be bathed, and put on a clean raiment, and called for a box which stood in an alcove, opened it, and gave a portion of what was in it to the deer to eat. Then she slipped her hand under her carpet and produced a stick to which she said something. She struck the deer hard. It pirouetted and became Prince Almas. The broidered handkerchief and the jewels lay upon the ground. The prince prostrated himself in thanks to heaven and Jamila and said, "Oh, delicious person! Oh, Chinese Venus! How shall I excuse myself for giving you so much trouble? With what words can I thank you?" Then she called for a clothes wallet and chose out a royal dress of honor. Her attendants dressed him in it and brought him again before the tender-hearted lady. She turned to him 100 hearts, took his hand and seated him beside her, and said,
Oh, youth, tell me truly who you are and where you came from, and how you fell into the power of my sister.
Even when he was a deer, the prince had much admired Jamila. Now he thought her 1,000 times more lovely than before. He judged that in truth alone was safety, and so told her the whole story. Then she asked,
Oh, Prince Almas, do you still wish so much to make the journey to the Whack of Kaf? What hope is there in it? The road is dangerous even near here, and this is not yet the borderland of Caucasus. Can't give up. It is a great risk to go if you are not wise. It would be a pity for such a man like you to fall into the hands of jinns and demons. Stay with me. I will do whatever you wish.
Oh, most delicious person, he answered. You are very generous, and the choice of my life lies in truth in your hands. But I beg one favor of you. If you love me, so do I too love you. If you really love me, do not forbid me to make this journey, but help me as far as you can. Then I may be that I shall succeed. And if I return with my purpose fulfilled, I will marry you according to the law, and take you to my own country, where we will spend the rest of our lives together in pleasure and good companionship. Help me, if you can, and give me your counsel."
"Oh, very stuff of my life,"
replied Jamila.
"I will give you the things that are not fit for king's treasures, and which will be of the greatest use to you. First, there are the bow and arrows of his reverence the Prophet Salih. Secondly, there is the scorpion of Solomon, on whom be peace, which is a sword such as no king has. Steel and stone are one to it, and if you bring it down on a rock, it will not be injured, and it will cleave whatever you strike. Thirdly, this dagger which the sage Timus himself made. This is most useful, and the man who wears it would not bend under 7 camels' load. What you have first to do is to get to the home of Sameka, and to make friends with him. If he favors you, he will take you to Whack of Kaf. If not, you will never get there. For the 7 seas are on the way, and they are not such seas as all the kings of the earth and all their wazirs and all their wise men considered for 1,000 years. They would not be able to cross them."
"Oh, most delicious person, where's the Summer's home? How shall I get there?"
"Oh, you fruit of life, you must do just what I tell you, and if you must use your eyes and your brains, for if you don't you will find yourself at the place of the Negroes, who are bloodthirsty set, and God forbid they should lay hands on your precious person."
Then she took the bow and quiver of arrows, the sword and the dagger out of a box, and the prince let fall Bismillah, and girded them all on. Then Jamila of the horror face produced 2 saddlebags of ruby red silk, one filled with roast fowl and little cakes, and the other with stones of price. Next she gave him a horse as swift as the breeze of the morning, and she said,
Accept all these from me. Ride till you come to the rising ground at no great distance from here, where there will be a spring. It is called the Place of Gifts, and you must stay there one night. There you will see many beasts, lions, tigers, leopards, and apes, and so on. Before you get there, you must capture some game. On the long road beyond there dwells a Lion King. All of the other beasts did not fear him. They would ravage the whole countryside and let no one pass. The lion is a red transgressor. So when he comes, rise and do him reverence. Take your cloth and rub the dust and earth from his face. Then set the game you have taken before him well cleansed, and lay the hands of respect on your breast. When he wishes to eat, take your knife and cut pieces of the meat and set them before him with a bow. This way you will unfold with the Lion King in perfect friendship, and he will be most useful to you, and you will be safe from molestation. When you go on to the Place of Gifts, be sure you do not take the right-hand road. Take the left, for the other leads to Negro Castle, which is known as the Place of Clashing Swords, and where there are 40 Negro captains, each over 3,000 and 4,000 more. The chief is Taramatak. Further on this is the home of Submerge.
Having stored these things in the prince's memory, she said,
You will see everything happen just as I have said.
Then she escorted him a little way, and then parted, and she went home to mourn his absence. Prince Almas, relying on the causer of causes, rode on to the Place of Gifts and dismounted at the platform. Everything happened just as Jamil had foretold. When one or two watches of the night had passed, he saw that the open ground before him was full of such stately and splendid animals that he could have never seen before. And by they made way for a wonderfully big lion, which was 80 yards from nose to tail tip, and was a magnificent creature. The prince advanced and saluted it, and proudly drooped his head and forelocks and paced to the platform. 70 or 80 others were with it, and now encircled it at a little distance. It laid its right paw over its left, and the prince took the kerchief Jamila had given him for the purpose, and rubbed the dust and earth from his face, then brought forward the game he had prepared, and crossed his hands respectfully on his breast, and stood waiting before it. When it wished for food, he cut off pieces of the meat, and put them in its mouth. The serving lions also came near, and the prince would have stayed his hand, but the king lion signed to him to feed them too. This he did, laying the meat on the platform. Then the king lion beckoned the prince to come near and said, Sleep at ease, my guards will watch you. So, surrounded by the lion guard, he slept till dawn. And the king lion said goodbye, and gave him a few of his own hairs, and said, When you are in any difficulty, burn one of these, and I will be there. And then it went off into the jungle. Prince Almas immediately started. He rode till he came to the parting of the ways. He remembered quite well that the right-hand way was short and dangerous. But he bethought himself, too, that whatever was written on his forehead would happen, and he took the forbidden road. By and by he saw a castle, and knew from what Jamil had told him that it was the place of clashing swords. He would have liked to go back the way he had come, but courage forbade it, and he said, What has been preordained from eternity will happen to me, and went on towards the castle. He was thinking of tying his horse to a tree which grew near the gates when the Negro came out and spied him. "Ho!" he said, wretched to himself. "This is good. Durham Duck has not eaten man meat for a long time, and is craving for some. I will take this creature to him." He took hold of the prince's reins and said, Dismount, man-child. Come to my master. He has wanted to eat man-meat this long time back. What nonsense are you saying? Said the prince, and other such words. The Negro understood that he was being abused. He cried, Come along, I will put you into such a state that the birds of the air will weep for you. Then the prince drew the scorpion of Solomon and struck him. Struck him on the lantern belt and shore him through that the sword came out the other side. He stood upright for a little while, muttered some words, put out his hand to seize the prince, then fell into two and surrendered his life. There was water close at hand, and as the prince made an ablution, he said, Oh, wonder my heart, my wonderful task lies upon you. The second Negro came out from the fort, and seeing what had been done, went back and told his chief. Others wished to be doubled, and went out, and of every one of the scorpion of Solomon made two. Then Simthrax set for Chief Negro Chilmack, who in the day of battle was worth 300, and said to him, I shall thank you to fetch me that man. Chilmack went out, tall as a tower and bearing a shield of 8 millstones, and as he walked he shouted, Oh, blunderhead, by what right you come to our country and kill our people? Come, make two of me. As the prince was despicable in his eyes, he tossed aside his club and rushed to grip him with his hands. He caught him by the collar and tucked him under his arm and set him off to Tramtug. But the prince drew the dagger of Timus and thrust it upwards through the giant's armpit, for its full length. This made Chilmack drop him and try to pick up his club, but when he stooped, the mighty sword shore him through at the waist. When news of his champion's death met Tramtug, he put himself at the head of the army of his negroes and led them forth. Many fell before the magic sword, and the prince labored on in spite of weakness and fatigue, till he was almost worn out. In a moment of respite from the attack, he struck his fire steel and burned the hair of the king lion. And he was just succeeded in this when the Negroes charged again and all but took him prisoner. Suddenly, from behind the distant veil of the desert appeared an army of lions, led by their king. What brings these scourges of heaven here? Cried the Negroes. They came roaring up and put fresh life into the prince. He fought on, and when he struck the belt of the wearer, it fell in two, and when on the head he cleft to the waist. Then 10,000 mighty lions joined the fray, and tore in pieces man and horse. Tramtug was left alone. He would have retired into his fort, but the prince shouted, Whither away, accursed one? Are you fleeing before me? At these defiant words the chief shouted back, Welcome, man, come here and I will soften you to wax beneath my club. Then he hurled his club at the prince's head, but it fell harmless, because the prince had quickly spurred his horse forward. The chief, believing he had hit him, was looking down for him, when all at once he came up behind him and cleft to the waist and sent him straight to hell. The king lion greatly praised the dashing courage of Prince Almas, and they went together to the castle of clashing swords, and found it adorned and fitted in princely fashion. In it was the daughter of Tramtug. Still a child, she sent a message to Prince Almas, saying, O king of my world, choose a slave to be your handmaid. Keep her with you where you go, and she will go. He sent for her, and she kissed his feet and received Muslim faith at his hands. He told her he was going on a long journey on important business, and that when he came back he would take her and her possessions to his own country, but for the present she must stay in the castle. Then he made over the fort and all that was in it to care for the lion, saying, Guard them, brother, let no one lay a hand on them. He said goodbye and chose a fresh horse from the chief's stable, and once again took to the road. After traveling many stages and for many days, he reached a plain of marvelous beauty and refreshment. It was carpeted with flowers, roses, tulips, clover. It had lovely lawns, and amongst them running water. The choicest place of earth was filled him with wonder. There was a tree such as he had never seen before. Its branches were like, but bore flowers and fruit of 1,000 kinds. Near it a reservoir had been fashioned of 4 sorts of stone: touchstone, pure stone, marble, and lodestone. In and out of it flowed water like attar. The prince felt sure this must be the place of Simmer. He dismounted and turned his horse loose to graze, ate some of the food Jamila had given him, and drank from the stream, and lay down to sleep. He was still dozing when he was aroused by the neighing and pawing of his horse. When he could see clearly, he made out a mountain-like dragon whose heavy breath crushed the stones beneath it into putty. He remembered the 1,000 names of God, and took the bow of Salah from its case and 3 arrows from its quiver. He bound the dagger to Timus firmly to his waist and hung the scorpion of Solomon round his neck. Then he set an arrow on the string and released it with such force that it went into the monster's eye right up to the notch. The dragon writhed on itself and belched forth an evil vapor and beat the ground with its head until the earth quaked. Then the prince took a second arrow and shot it into its throat. It drew in its breath and would have sucked the prince into its maw, but when it was striking distance, he drew his sword, and having committed himself to God, struck a mighty blow which cut the creature's neck down to the gullet. The foul vapor of the beast and horror of its strangeness now overcame the prince, and he fainted. When he came to himself, he found that he was drenched in the gore of the dead monster. He rose and thanked God for his deliverance. The nest of Simmer was in the wonderful tree above him, and in it were young birds. The parents were always searching for food. They always told the children before they left not to put their heads out of the nest. But today, at the noise of the fight below, they looked down and saw the whole affair. By the time the dragon had been killed, they were very hungry and set up a clamor for food. The prince therefore cut up the dragon and fed them with it, bit by bit, till they had eaten the whole. He then washed himself and lay down to rest, and he was still asleep when Simmer came home. As a rule, the young birds raised a clamor to welcome when their parents came near, but on this day they were so full of dragon meat that they had no choice. They had to go to sleep. As they flew nearer, the old bird saw the prince lying under the tree, and no sign of life from the nest. They thought that the misfortune which for so many earlier years had befallen them again happened, and their nestlings had disappeared. They had never been able to find out the murderer, and now suspected the prince. "He has eaten our children and sleeps after it. He must die," said the father bird, and flew back to the hills and clawed up a huge stone which he meant to let fall on the prince's head. But his mate said, "Let us look into the first nest and kill the innocent person we condemn us to the day of resurrection." They flew nearer, and presently the young birds woke and cried, "Mother, why have you brought us?" And they told the whole story of the fight, and how they were alive only by the favor of the young man under the tree, and his cutting up the dragon and their eating. The mother bird then remarked, "Surely, father, you were about to do a strange thing, and a terrible sin has been averted from you." Then the Simmer flew off a distance and with a great stone and dropped it. It sank back down to the very middle of the earth. Coming back, Simmer saw that the little sunshine fell upon the prince, though it had leaves, and it spread its wings and shaded him until he woke. When he got up, he salaamed to it, who returned the greeting with joy and gratitude, and caressed him and said, "Oh, youth, tell me true. Who are you, and why are you here? And how did you cross this pitiless desert where never yet man had trod?" The prince began to tell his story from beginning to end, and finishing by saying, "Now it is my heart's wish that you should help me get to the Whack of Cactus. Perhaps by your favor I shall accomplish my task and avenge my brothers." In reply, the Simurgh first blessed the deliverer of his children, and then went on. What have you done no child of man has ever done before? You surely have claimed all my help, for every year up till now the dragon has come here and has destroyed my nestlings, and I have never been able to find out who the murderer was to avenge myself. By God's grace, you have removed my children's powerful foe. I regard you as a child of my own. Stay with me. I will give you everything you desire, and I will establish a city here for you, and will furnish it with every requisite. I will give you the land of the Caucasus, and will make its princes subject to you. Give up the journey to Waka, for it is full of risk, and the jinns will certainly kill you. But nothing could move the prince. Seeing this, the bird went on. Well, so be it. When you wish to set forth, you must go into the plain and take 7 head of deer, and must make watertight bags of their hides, and keep their flesh in 7 portions. 7 seas lie in our way. I will carry you over them, but if I have not food or drink, we shall fall into the sea and be drowned. When I ask you to put food and water into my mouth, we shall make the journey safely. The prince did all he was told, and then they took flight, and they crossed the 7 seas. At each one the prince fed the Simurgh. When they had alighted on the shore of the last sea, it said, Oh, my son, here lies your road. Follow it to the city. Take the 3 feathers of mine, and if you are in difficulty, burn one, and I will be with you in a twinkling of an eye. The prince walked on in solitude till he reached the city. He went in and wandered about through all quarters, and through bazaars and lanes and squares, in the least knowing from whom he could ask information about the riddle of Mir Hazif. He spent 7 days thinking over it in silence. On the first day of his coming he had made friends with a young cloth merchant, and a great liking had sprung up between them. One day he said abruptly to his companion, Oh, dear friend, I wish you would tell me what the rose did to the cypress, and what is the sense of the riddle. The merchant started and exclaimed, If there were not brotherly affection between us, I would cut off your head for asking me this. Well, if you meant to kill me, retorted the prince, you would still have to tell me first what I want to know. When the merchant saw the prince wasn't deadly earnest, he said, If you wish to hear the truth of the matter, you must wait upon our king. There is no other way. No one else can tell you. I have a well-wisher at the court named Farukafal, and will introduce you to him. That would be excellent, said the prince. And a meeting was arranged between Farukafal and Almas. And when the emir took him to the king's presence and introduced him as a stranger and traveler who had come from far to sit in the shadow of King Sinova. Now, the Simurgh had given the prince a diamond, weighing 30 mescals, and ordered this to the king, who at once recognized its value and asked where it had been obtained. I, your slave, had riches and state and power. There are many such stones in my country. On the way here, I was plundered by the castle clasps and swords, and I have saved this only one thing only, hidden in my bathing cloth. In return for the diamond, King Sinova showered gifts of much greater value, for he remembered that it was the last possession of a prince. He showed the utmost kindness and hospitality, and gave his wazir orders to install the prince in the royal guest house. He took much pleasure in his visitor's society, and they were together every day and spent the time most pleasantly. Several times the king said, Ask me for something that I may give to you. One day, so pressed to know what would pleasure the prince, that the latter said, I have only one wish, and that I will name to you in private. The king at once demanded everyone to withdraw. Then Prince Almas said, The desire of my life is to know what the rose did to the cypress, and what the meaning there is in these words. The king was astounded. In God's name, if anyone else had said that to me, I should cut his head off instantly. The prince heard this in silence, and was presently so beguiled the king with pleasant talk that to kill him was impossible. Time flew by, and the king again and again begged the prince to ask some gift of him, and always received the same reply. I wish for your majesty's welfare. What more can I desire? And one night there was a banquet, and the cupbearers carried round gold and silver cups of sparkling wine, and singers with sweetest voices contended for a prize. The prince drank from the king's own cup. And when his head was hot with wine, he took a lute from one of the musicians and placed himself on the carpet border and sang until he wished away any of the sense of all who listened. Applause and compliments rang from every side. The king filled his cup and called the prince and gave it to him and said, "Name your wish, it's yours." The prince drained off the wine and answered, "O king of the world, learn and know that I have only one aim in life, and that is to know what the rose did to the cypress." "Never yet," replied the king, "has any man come out from that question alive. If this is your only wish, so be it. I will tell you. But I will do this on one condition only, namely that when you have heard, you will submit yourself to death." To this the prince agreed, and said, "I set my foot firmly on this compact." The king then gave an order to an attendant. A costly carpet overlaid with European velvet was placed near him, and a dog was led in by a gold and silver chain and set upon splendid stuffs. A band of fair girls came in and stood around it waiting. Then with ill words 12 negroes dragged a lovely woman fettered on hands and feet and meanly dressed, and they set her down on the bare floor. She was extraordinarily beautiful and ashamed of the glorious sun. The king ordered 100 stripes to be laid on her tender body. She sighed a long sigh. Food was called for and tablecloths were spread. Delicate meats were set before the dog, and water given it in a royal cup of Chinese crystal. When it had eaten its fill, its leavings were then placed before the lovely woman, and she was made to eat of them. She wept, and her tears were pearls. Thank you for the follow. She wept, and her tears were pearls. She smiled, and her lips shed roses. Pearls and flowers were gathered up and taken to the treasury. "Now," said the king, "you have seen these things, and your purpose is fulfilled." "Truly," said the prince, "I have seen things which I have not understood. What do they mean, and what is the story for them? Tell me, and then kill me." Then said the king, "The woman you see there in chains is my wife. She is called Gull, the Rose, and I am Sinuba, the Cypress. One day I was hunting and became thirsty. After a great search, I discovered a well in a place so secret that neither bird nor beast nor man can find it without labor. I was alone. I took my turban for a rope and my cap for a bucket. There was a good deal of water, and when I let down my rope, something caught it, and I could not in any way draw it back. I shouted down into the well, 'Oh, servant of God, whoever you are, why do you deal unfairly with me? I am dying of thirst. Let go, in God's name.' A cry came up from an answer, 'Oh, servant of God, we have been in the well a long time. In God's name, get us out.' After trying 1,000 schemes, I drew up 2 blind women. They said they were Peris, and that their king had blinded them in his anger and had left them alone in the well. 'Now,' they said, 'if you will get us a chance to cure for blindness, we will devote ourselves as your servants, and we will do whatever you wish.' 'What is the cure for your blindness?' 'Not far from this place,' they said, 'a cow comes up from the great sea to graze, and during her dung will cure us. You should be eternally grateful as your debtors. Do not let the cow see you, or she will surely kill you.' With renewed strength and spirit I went to the shore. There I watched the cow come up from the sea, graze, and go back. Then I came out from my hiding and took a little of her dung and conveyed it to the Peris. they rubbed it in their eyes, and by the divine might saw again. They thanked heaven and me, then considered what they could do to show their gratitude to me. Our Perry King, they said, has a daughter whom he keeps under his own eye and thinks the most lovely girl on earth. In good sooth, she has not her equal. Now we will get her into your house, and you must win her heart. But if she has an inclination for another, you must drive it out and win her for yourself. Her mother loves her so dearly that she cannot ease but in her presence, but she will give her to no one in marriage. Teach her to love you so that she cannot exist without you. But if the matter becomes known to her mother, she will have you burned in a fire. Then you must beg, as the last favor, that your body may be anointed with oil, so that you may burn the more quickly and be spared torture. If the Perry King allows this favor, we too will manage to be your anointers, and we will put an oil on you that if you are 1,000 years in the fire, not a trace of burning would remain. In the end, the two Perrys took me to the girl's house. I saw her sleeping daintily. She was most lovely, and I was so amazed at the perfection of her beauty that I stood with senses lost, and did not know if she were real or a dream. When at last I saw that she was a real girl, I returned thanks that I, the runner, had come to my goal, and that I, the seeker, had found my treasure. When the Perry opened her eyes, she was asked to affright, "Who are you? Have you come to steal? How did you get in here? Be quick, save yourself from this whirlpool of destruction, for the demons and Perrys who guard me will awake and seize you." But love's arrow had struck me deep, and the girl too looked kindly on me. I could not go away. For some months I remained hidden in her house. We did not dare to let her mother know of our love. Sometimes the girl was very sad and fearful lest her mother should come to know. One day her father said to her, "Sweetheart, for some time I have noticed that your beauty is not what it is. How is this? Has sickness touched you? Tell me that I may seek a cure." Alas, there was now no way of concealing the mingled delight and anguish of our love. From secret it became known. I was put in prison, and the world grew dark to my rose, and bereft of her lover. The Perry King ordered me to be burnt, and said, "Why have you, a man, done this pedrifous thing in my house?" His Perrys and demons collected amber wood and made a pile, and would have set me on it when I remembered the word of life from the two Perrys I had rescued had breathed into my ear, and I asked that my body might be rubbed with oil to release me the sooner from torture. This was allowed, and those two contrived to be my anointers. I was put into the fire, and it kept up for 7 days and nights, but by the will of the great king it left no trace upon me. At the end of the week the Perry King ordered that the ashes be cast upon the dust heap, and I was found alive and unharmed. Perrys who had seen Go consumed by her love for me now interceded with the king, and said, "It is clear that your daughter's fortunes are bound up with his, for the fire has not burnt him. It is best to give him the girl, for they love one another. He is a king of Quaff, and you will find no one better." To this the king agreed, and made formal marriage between Go and myself. You now know the price I have paid for this faithless creature, O prince. Remember our compact. "I remember," said the prince, "but tell me what brought Queen Go to her present pass." "One night," continued King Suleiman, "I was roused by feeling Go's hand and feet, deadly cold against my body. I asked her where she had gone out, it's been so cold, and she said she'd gone out tonight. Next morning, when I went to my stable, I saw that 2 of my horses, Windfoot and Tiger, were thin and worn out. I reprimanded the groom and beat him. He asked where his fault lay, and said that every night my wife took one or the other of these horses and rode away, and came back only just before dawn. A flame kindled in my heart, and I asked myself where she could go and what she could do. I told the groom to be silent, and when next Go took a horse from the stable to saddle another quickly and bring it to me. That day I did not hunt, but stayed home to follow up the matter. I lay down as usual at night and pretended to fall asleep. When I seemed safely off, Gull got up and went to the stable as her custom was. That night it was Tiger's turn. She rode off with him, and I took Windfoot and followed. With me went that dog you see, a faithful friend who never left me. When I came to the foot of those hills which lie outside the city, I saw Gull dismount and go towards a house which the negroes had built there. Over against the door was a high seat, and on it lay a giant negro before whom she salaamed. He got up and beat her till she was marked with wheals, but she uttered no complaint. I was dumbfounded, for once, when I had struck her with a talk with Rosestock, she had complained and fretted for 3 days. And when the negro did this to her, "Oh, now, ugly, shaven headlands, why are you so late? Why are you not wearing wedding garments?" She answered him, "The person did not go to sleep quickly. He stayed at home all day, and so that I was not able to adorn myself. I came as soon as I could." In a little while he called her to sit beside him. This was more than I could bear. I lost control of myself and rushed upon him. He clutched my collar, and we grappled in a deadly struggle. Suddenly she came behind me and caught my feet and threw me. While he held me on the ground, she drew out my own knife and gave it to him. I should have been killed but for that faithful dog which seized his throat and pulled him down and pinned him to the ground. Then I got up and dispatched the wretch. There were 4 of the negroes at the place, and 3 I killed, and the 4th got away, and has taken refuge beneath the throne of Mirafurs, the daughter of King Quimus. I took Gull back to my palace, and from that time till now I have treated her as a dog is treated, and I have cared for my dog as though it were my wife. Now you know what the rose did to the cypress, and now you must keep your compact with me." "I shall keep my word," said the prince, "but may a little water be taken to the roof so that it may take my last absolution?" At this request the king consented. The prince mounted the roof, and getting into a corner, struck the fire steel and burned one of the feathers into the flame. Straightway it appeared, and by the majesty of its presence made the city quake. It took the prince on its back and soared away to the zenith. After a time, King Cinnabar said, "That young man is taking a long time on the roof. Bring him here." But there was no sign of the prince upon the roof, only far away in the sky. The Cimmerians had been carrying him off. When the king heard of his escape, he thanked heaven that his hands were clean of this blood. Up and up flew the Cimmerian, till earth looked like an egg resting on the ocean. At length it dropped straight down to its own place, where the kind prince was welcomed by young birds and most hospitably entertained. He told the whole story of the rose and the cypress, and then, laden with gifts which the Cimmerian had gathered from cities far and near, he set his face to the castle of clashing swords. The king lion came out to meet him, and took the negro chief's daughter, who was also named Gull, in lawful marriage, and then marched with her and her possessions and her attendants to the Palace of Gifts, where they halted for the night. At dawn they said goodbye to the king lion and set off for Jamila's country. When Lady Jamila heard that Prince Almas was near, she went out with many of her handmaid to give a loving reception. Their meeting was joyful, and they went together to the garden palace. Jamila summoned all her notables, and with their presence her marriage with the prince was solemnized. A few days later she entrusted her affairs to her wazir and made preparations to go with the prince to his own country. But before she started, she restored all the men whom her sister Latifa had bewitched to their own forms, and received their blessings, and set them forward to their homes. The wicked Latifa herself she left quite alone in her garden house. When all was ready to set out with her, all servants and slaves, all her treasure and goods, and journeyed at ease to the city of King Quimus. When King Quimus heard of the approach of such a great company, he sent out his vizier to give the prince an honorable meeting, to ask what had procured the favor of the visit. The Prince sent back word that he had no thought of war, but he wrote, "Learn to know, King Quimus, that I am here to end crimes of your insolent daughter, who has tyrannously done to death many kings and kings' sons, and has hung their heads in your citadel. I am here to give her the answer to her riddle." Later on, he entered the city and beat boldly on the drums and was conducted into the presence. The king entreated him to have nothing to do with the riddle, for that no man had come out of it alive. "O king," replied the prince, "it is to answer this that I am here. I will not withdraw." Miraflores was told that one man more had staked his head on her question, and that this was one who said he knew the answer. At the request of the prince, all the officers and notables of the land were summoned to hear his reply to the princess. All assembled, and the king and his queen Golgrach, and the girl and the prince were there. The prince addressed Miraflores. "What is the question you ask?"
"What did the rose do to the cypress?"
she rejoined. The prince smiled and turned and addressed the assembly. "You who are experienced men and versed in affairs, did you ever know or hear or see anything of this matter?"
"No," they answered. "No one has ever known or heard or seen aught about it. It is an empty fancy."
"From whom, then, did the princess hear it? This empty fancy is what has done away many a servant of God to death." All saw the good sense of his words and showed their approval. Then he turned to the princess. "Tell us the truth, princess. Who told you this thing? I know it hair by hair and in and out. If I tell you what I know, who is there that can say I may speak the truth? You must produce the person who can confirm my words." Her heart sank, for she feared that her long-kept secret was now to be noised abroad. But she said merely,
"Explain yourself."
"I shall explain myself fully when you bring me here the negro whom you hide beneath your throne." Here the king shouted in wonderment.
"Explain yourself, young man. What negro does my daughter hide beneath her throne?"
"That," said the prince, "you'll see if you order it to be brought here. The negro will be found beneath the throne of the princess." Messengers were forthwith dispatched to the garden house, and after a while they returned, bringing the negro whom they had discovered in a secret chamber beneath the throne of Miraflores, dressed in the dress of honor and surrounded with luxury. The king was overwhelmed with astonishment, but the girl had taken heart again. She had had time to think that perhaps the prince had heard of the presence of the negro and knew more. So she said hotly,
"Prince, you have not answered my riddle."
"Oh, amazingly impudent person!" he cried. "Do you not yet repent?" Then he turned to the people and told them the whole story of the rose and the cypress, of King Cinnabar and Queen Gull. When he came to the killing of negroes, he said to the one who stood before them, "You, too, were present."
"That is so. All happened as you have told it."
There was a great rejoicing in the court and all through the country over solving of the riddle, because now no more kings or princes would be killed. King Quimus made over his daughter to Prince Almas, but the latter refused to marry her and took her as his captive. When he asked that the heads should be removed from the battlements and given a decent burial, this was done. He received from the king everything that belonged to Miraflores, her treasure of gold and silver, her costly stuffs and carpets, her household plenishing, her horses, her camels, her servants, and her slaves. He then returned to his camp and sent for Dilaram, who came bringing her goods and her chattels, her gold and her jewels. When all was ready, Prince Almas set for home, taking with him Jamala, Dilaram, and Gull, daughter of Taramtak, and the wicked Miraflores, and all the belongings of the four, packed on horses and camels and in carts without number. As he approached the borders of his father's country, word of him coming went before him, and all the city came forth to give him welcome. King Saman Lapush, Jessamine, rare of rubies, had so bewept the loss of his sons that they were now blind. The prince had kissed his feet and received his blessings. He took from a casket the little collarbone of Solomon, which Summer had given it, and which reveals the hidden things of the earth, and rubbed it on his father's eyes. The light came, and the king saw his son. Mirafritz was brought before the king, and the prince said, "This is the murder of your sons. Do with her as you will." The king fancied that the prince might care for the girl's beauty, and replied, "You have humbled her. Do with her as you will." Upon this, the prince sent for 4 swift and strong horses, and they were bound to each one, and then each was driven to one of the 4 corners, and he tore in pieces like muslin. This frightened Miraflor horribly, for she thought the same thing would be done to herself. She cried to the prince,
"Oh, Prince Almas, what is the hardest to get is most valued. Up till now I've been the subject of no man, and no man has had my love. The many kings and kings' sons who have died at my hands have died because it was their fate to die like this. In this matter I have not sinned. That was their fate from eternity, and from the beginning it was predestined that my fate should be bound up with yours."
The prince gave ear to her argument from preordainment, and as she was a lovely maiden, he took her too into lawful marriage. She and Jamila set up house together, and Doram and Gull set up theirs, and the prince passed the rest of his life with 4 in perfect happiness, and in pleasant and sociable entertainment. Now has been told what rose into the Cypress. Finished, finished, finished.